mes amis, it's me, Creole Lady Marmalade. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, bienvenue. So for today's video, I actually made a playlist of DNA results that I watched on YouTube. And I made a playlist of the ones that I came across where the people were roughly 50% sub-Saharan African or Black. And I did that because for me, my results, according to 23andMe, I'm 51.4% sub-Saharan African. According to Ancestry, I'm 52% sub-Saharan African. Tomato, same difference. And what I found is that I rarely see people who are right at that 50-ish mark. I mean, of course, you think biracial people 50-50, but no. In America, at least, African Americans are already slightly diluted. So when an African American who's already, 80-85% Black mixes with someone who's likely 100% or damn near 100% European, the product of that is always going to be slightly more European and slightly less African. So they tend to fall more in a 40-ish% range. I watched a ton of biracial ones, and I mean, it makes sense. Most of them tend to fall in 40-ish% African. Now, you do have some biracial people who fall around 45, but probably not as often as below 45. Because African Americans, on average, the highest amount of them fall between 80 to 90%. So the biracial child of the average African American, they're gonna fall more so 40 to 45%. It's gonna be rare for them to go over 45, unless their Black parent is African. But I'm in America, I don't see that too often. Like Obama, I would imagine to be 50-50, or Trevor Noah, I would imagine both of them to be 50-50. But the average biracial American is going to be a little less than 50% Black, a little more than 50% white. So I just rarely see people in that like 50 to 59% African range. And I said 50 to 59, but I'm gonna bring it down to 45 because not too many biracial Americans are gonna be above 45%. So I'd say that 45 to 55% range, that's pretty much 50. That 50 falls right in between those two. And so those two are it's rare to be between 45 and 55.
Even though I'm talking about 45 to 55% here, I'm still including people up to 59% because that still falls within the 50th percentile, and they are still rare to come across in America.
People in America of African ancestry, the ones who are less than, I believe it was 60% African, we account for like 5% of African Americans. It's extremely rare for Americans of African descent to be less than 60% African, unless they are biracial. And then if they are biracial, then they're a little less than 50%. I feel like 45 to 55% sub-Saharan African would be the hardest to maintain throughout several generations. In order for an MGM to have stayed perfectly at 50-50, you had to have several consecutive generations of non-stop mulattoes mixing. It's rare for that to have happened at damn near every generation. For you to stay at the 50-50 mark without being biracial, but to stay at roughly 50-50, that's a lot of mixing. It's very hard to maintain a completely middle 50-50 mix, because typically, if someone's biracial, they're gonna get with a Black person, the child's gonna be predominantly Black. They get with a white person, to be predominantly white. It's so rare for that 50-50 to continue. So that's why I like that 45 to 55% sub-Saharan African range. That's still pretty much half. We're still genetically biracial at that point. So I was curious to be like, well, are most of them who fall in that range, would most of them be perhaps Dominican, or are they MGM Americans, or Creoles, which you just don't find a lot of Creole people with results and stuff online. So I also thought it'd be cool to look at people who fall right at 50-50, because I feel like a lot of people can look at it and identify with it, where it's right in the middle. So I figured you have people who are slightly over and in that 60-65% range, and they can look at it and still identify with it. And then you have biracial people who fall more in the 40-ish% range, and they can look at it and identify. So I figured it could speak to a handful of us who are right at 50%, and then the others, and kind of look at the similarities in phenotypes. And we all know that phenotype doesn't speak for genetics or biology. You can come out looking any kind of way. But I was just curious. And so I made like a little playlist of it, and I thought I'd show you guys my findings. All right, so let's check them out.
So first up, we got my boy Steve from the Jubilee Who's the Most Black video, where strangers got together and ranked each other based on who they thought was the most black down to the least black.
The three of us, we have one white parent, one black parent, right? Or
both of my parents are black.
Both your parents black, okay.
They just happen to be the two light brights that got together, you know.
Clearly, he doesn't know what an MGM is.
I did think of him like, oh, he's biracial. And then he said he had two black parents, and I was like, huh.
And then Steve, 56.5%.
That does being right next to each other.
I wonder if Steve had any clue that his results would be that low, be it that his parents only identify as black. I wonder if they know they have mixed ancestry and they just identify as black, or if they really just didn't know and just assumed they're light skinned. But on another note, if you notice, the guy next to Steve is 67% black. He came as a shocker to everyone because they didn't know that he has a white great-grandparent. So it's interesting to see that he's an unambiguous black person with two black parents, but you wouldn't realize that he actually has a white great-grandparent. So that means he has a biracial grandparent. And I definitely consider him to be an MGM just like Steve. And it goes to show you that not all MGMs have to look quote-unquote mixed. But he's, you know, less than 70% black. He has a semi-recent non-black relative. He's a very accurate depiction of an MGM, just as Steve is, who's very obviously the product of two mixed parents who don't realize they're mixed or just don't want to identify with being mixed.
39.3%.
So next we have Mom Boss of Two, and shouts out to her for being one of the very, very few Louisiana Creole DNA test results that I was even able to find. So I was super excited to see hers.
My family's from New Orleans, both my parents. I knew that I was Creole. I knew that I had different mixes in me, but I never knew how much, and now I do. I was really shocked with my results, and I was like, and yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and read you guys off my results. So my first ethnicity that was number one is Benin Togo. I'm 24%. I'm 15% England, Wales, and Northwestern Europe. That was my second. My third, I'm also 15% Cameroon, Congo, and Southern Bantu. I'm 11% Spanish.
Oh my gosh, a Creole person under the age of like 50 with a nice chunk of Spanish ancestry. For me, I also have Spanish ancestry, but mine mainly comes from Latin America via my great-grandfather who was from Nicaragua. Though I do have 2 or 3% that comes from my dad's side, which would be a part of my Creole, colonial, Louisiana Spanish ancestry. But the largest chunk does come from Latin America. But her and I are pretty similar in that she has 11% Spanish and I have 14%. That's pretty cool.
And I'm 9% England. I just can't speak. I'm 9% Ireland and Scotland. 8% Mali. Only 7% French, which is interesting.
She's saying that's interesting because as Creole people, we just grow up assuming we're like French. I mean, well, black, of course, but I mean, outside of the black, we assume French and Native American. And of course, none of us Americans are as Native American as we thought, but Creoles, we tend to have this idea that we're like half or more black, and then the other remainder is kind of split down the middle between French and Native American. So it's always kind of a shock when we don't see as much French as we thought we'd see. But in her case, I think it's pretty cool that she's even seeing 7%, because a lot of us younger Creoles, we not built like the older ones. We know with all the blending with African Americans, a lot of us tend to have more British or more Anglo ancestry than the old school Creoles had. So for her to even have 7% French and 11% Spanish, you know, those put together, that's still a fifth of her ancestry is, you know, old school Latin, European ancestry that a lot of Creoles today don't even have that much.
I'm 5% Ivory Coast, Ghana. I'm 5%, or I'm 2% Senegal, and then even 2% Greek, and 1% Portuguese, and 1% Swedish. And that is my ancestry.
That's so crazy to me that she didn't have an ounce of Nigerian. Like, I don't think I've ever seen any American of African ancestry who didn't have some Nigerian. Like, most of the people that I see, Nigerian is either their highest or second highest African ethnic group. For me, I think it's my highest on 23andMe. I'm like 17% Nigerian. I think it's the most that I am of anything, 17%. So that's so weird to me that she doesn't have any Nigerian.
Also on Ancestry.com, you can see where your family migrated to. Obviously, I just told you my family's from New Orleans, my whole entire family, both sides. And so that's where the migration happened, was in Louisiana. And so, yeah, that's what it shows me on my map. But how about we add them up? So I'm pulling up my calculator. Okay, so let's do how black am I? And then we'll do the others. So I'm 54% African. I'm biracial. I'm biracial. 54%, that's it. I'm only 54%. That is insane. I'm basically biracial. That's like half, you guys. 54%. So I'm 40%, 46% everything else. Yeah, that's crazy, you guys. I am totally shocked. When you do numbers like that, you're like, fuck, like that's crazy. I'm literally only 54%. Hey, I'm 54%. I'm 54%. No, that's really it. I'm only 54%. So I have so many things in me, you guys. It's crazy that I'm only 54% African. I am so many other things, and I think that is so awesome that I'm such a mixed, diverse person. Like, but that's awesome, you guys.
So next up we have Jam, and she is Boricua y Cubana.
So now I'm going to talk about a little bit of my family history and what I think my results are going to turn out. So I am Puerto Rican from my dad's side. My dad was born in the Bronx, but his parents are Puerto Rican, came to this country when they were young adults. And my mom was born in Havana, Cuba, and she came to this country around 4 years old. So how I'm thinking my results are going to come out is I'm expecting to see a lot of European, like Iberian Peninsula. And I'm also expecting to see African because, I mean, look at my hair. I know curly hair isn't like native to African people, but I'm thinking that's where I probably got it from. And if you haven't seen my sister, she's been on my channel before. I'll probably put a little clip of her. With my sister, back on my channel, you guys may remember her. Her name is Aretha Franklin.
Oh, God! Simone!
As you can see, my sister's very dark. She's like the darkest one in my family. My dad's pretty dark, and my mom is about my skin tone. But my sister just came out super black. I don't know why. And she has like an afro. And growing up, she had lazy eye, which I think is common within African people. I mean, that's what the doctor told me. I don't know. I'm also expecting to see some kind of like Indian, like Taino Indian. So the top ethnicity estimate, like the top of what I am, is Cameroon/Congo, which is at 19%. Right after that, I'm 15% Iberian Peninsula, which is like around Portugal and Spain. I expected that. I mean, I am Hispanic. And then equal to the Iberian Peninsula, I am also 15% Europe South. What even is that? Primarily located in Italy and Greece. So yeah, 15% of Europe South, okay? And then I'm 10% Irish / Scotland/Wales. I am 8% Mali or Mali. That is, where is that? Yeah, that's in Africa as well. 8% Nigerian and 7% Benin/Togo, which is also African. So basically, I'm like super African. And then I'm 5% Native American. I thought there'd be more because, like I said, a lot of people in my family do look pretty Native American. The low confident region, so basically everything under 5%. European Jewish, 5%. Senegal, 3%. And then a lot of African countries, less than 1%, Middle East, less than 1%, Great Britain, less than 1%. I am kind of disappointed though, because like I said, everything is such a low percentage. Like, I've seen all these other tests and people will be at least 80% of something or 50% of something. My highest percentage result is 19%.
I actually feel her on that one because my highest percent is 17% Nigerian. But I guess it's just the plight of being super mixed. My next highest is Spanish at 14%. So a lot of times when people are like, well, you can't claim something unless you're a quarter of it. I'm not a quarter of anything. I'm not even a fifth of anything. So if that's the case, I guess I don't exist. I guess she doesn't exist.
But I guess I'm just a really mixed person and I don't have a lot of anything. So I mean, I don't know how I feel. I just want it to be a lot of something, but everything is just so small. But I'm just gonna take away from this that I'm pretty African. and a little European.
She was a little backwards right here because I tallied everything up and she was actually roughly 46% African and 47% European, which is basically half and half. But I mean, if you were gonna say one is more than the other, it's European. And then 5% Native American and less than 2% other.
And a tiny bit Native American. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've seen any results like this.
My mom's results are actually almost identical to these, and she's a quarter Nicaraguan from her grandfather. So it's interesting because she's part Hispanic, and then this girl is Hispanic. My mom is actually 47% African, 47% European, and 6% indigenous or Native American. So yeah. And next we have Dominican YouTuber Christina, who I'm actually subscribed to. She has really dope content about Dominican issues and Dominican topics, and I find them to be particularly interesting because being Creole, the closest community we have, because our community is so small, the closest one that we have to us that's the most similar, that has the same issues that we have, are Dominicans and Puerto Ricans, probably more so Dominicans though. So yeah, I like her channel. So let's get into her results.
So my background is Dominican. I was born here in the US, but my parents were both born in the Dominican Republic. And I'll share some quick photos of them in their younger days so you can see what they look like.
Like, how beautiful are her parents? Oh my gosh.
When you say you're proud to be Dominican, you are proud to be African. You're proud to be Taino. You're proud of your European ancestry because that makes us who we are.
Like, what is so hard to comprehend about that? I mean, I'm not Dominican, so I'm not proud to be Taino. But I mean, the same message applies. Any mixed group. When I say I'm proud to be Creole, that means I'm also proud to be Black. That means I'm proud to be everything that is encompassed within that.
So I feel like to try to label us and put us in just one box, whether it be just Black or even just white, it's just, I just feel like it's like, why can't we be proud to be everything that we are? So with that being said, I will now go on to read the results of my test. So I'll start with what I have the highest percentages of and then go down. So at the top, I am 30% Benin Togo. So I was definitely excited to see that. The next is Spain, 20%. So not surprised with that, given the history of DR and because I know that I have great grandparents on both sides that were actually from Spain. Next is Cameroon, Congo / Southern Bantu peoples, coming in at 14%. Next is Native American at 7%. Next is Ivory Coast, Ghana at 6%. After that comes Ireland and Scotland, which I was not expecting to see, at 3%. Next is Italy, 3%. After that, Greece and the Balkans, 2%. Next is Mali, 1%. France, 1%. Eastern Europe and Russia, 1%. And then again a Native American, but this time is specified Andean. So I know that's somewhere in South America, 1%. Next is Basque, 1%, which is like a part between Spain and France. So I guess it's like a mixture of Spanish and French people there that go by Basque. And then last is Nigeria at 1%. When you sum it all up, I am basically 52% African, 40% European, and 8% Native American. So we'll begin with the African DNA, as that is the highest that I have, or sub-Saharan African, I should say. So 23andMe put me at 50.7%, whereas Ancestry had put me at 52%.
This is really cool to me because my results were the same. On Ancestry, my results were 52%, just like hers. And then on 23andMe, they went down to 51.4%, just like hers went down to 50.7%. Also, I have 16.7% Nigerian, and she has 16.5%.
Pretty much all the different tests I have done put me right between that 50 to 52% African. So I'm basically half Black. So yeah, that was that. And then Congolese in Southeast Africa. So I believe this corresponds with like the Cameroon, Congo, and Southern Bantu peoples that Ancestry DNA results provides. Okay, so now moving on to the European DNA. 23andMe has me at 22.9% European. So as you all can see, the largest amounts of European DNA that I have is Southern European.
That is crazy because I also have 23% Southern European and 14.3% Spanish and Portuguese. And she's not far off with 17.7% Spanish and Portuguese.
And then I have some Northwestern European, which Ancestry did also give me. And then broadly European, whatever that is. All right, and now looking at the Native American DNA. So I have 6.6%. Ancestry had put me at 8%, I believe it was, so not too far off. Now here's one difference between 23andMe and Ancestry DNA. In 23andMe, they actually separate out Western Asian and North African. So I had 3.6% of that, 1.6% North African, which did not show on my Ancestry results. And then I have broadly Western Asian and North African at 1.7%. Now, I was a little bummed out to see that a whole 5.9% was unassigned, but at the same time, I wasn't surprised because a lot of the 23andMe result videos that I've seen, pretty much everyone has unassigned DNA. However, I did have this traced ancestry, and when I looked into it further, it is Central and South Asian at 0.3%.
All right, that was so cool. Like, so many beautiful people with beautiful, interesting backgrounds. I just love watching DNA videos in general. I love watching all the various mixes. Even the ones that are actually the ones that are like closest to monoracial are super interesting because they're the closer you get to 100% for Black people, at least, the rarer that is. So those are interesting to me. All of them are interesting to me. I just love knowing about people's backgrounds. And yeah, so these were super cool for me. I love seeing, of course, I love seeing people that are similar to me with similar mixes to me. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Let me know your comments down below. Did you find it super interesting? What are your percentages? Have you taken a DNA test? Do you know what your percentages are? Just let me know what you thought of the video, what you thought of any of the particular people. If you haven't taken a DNA test, do you plan on it? Would you want to? Why would you want to? Why would you not want to? Drop it all down in the comments below. But again, thank you so much for watching. Talk to you guys soon. Oh, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff. Okay, talk to you guys later. Au revoir.